service learning. And so I'll talk a little bit about what is service learning, and just know that it all comes back to that same EWB project that we kind of started with. So service learning is this idea that equal benefits between those who are providing the service to that community, and then those who, the community in receiving that. So EWB is structured to be a service learning organization that the students who travel are learning and getting so much quality experience and worldwide, as well as practicing their skills of being an engineer. But it's the same amount of benefits going to the community who is getting, in our case, water, piped water with a distribution system. And that should be equal in a service learning analysis. And so my whole master's and what I looked at is that equal, right? I know my life was changed. I know I got a lot out of EWB. Does that really equate to each other? And a lot of this, you guys aren't the only ones I've told this to. A lot of these analysis I brought back to EWB themselves as well, and I've shared it with other groups too. So in that, so the whole project, I kind of set it up earlier. What was ended up doing was there ended up being a 75-meter deep borehole that was built there in Cameroon, in Mongoagoa. It wasn't actually the well that was drilled on my trip, my second time going to Cameroon. That well ended up not working, and so another group had to put in another well. But the second one, or third one, anyway, the later one ended up working. What our group who went later, because of the Boko Haram safety issues, so we went in 2015 and 2016. In 2015, we put in these solar panels. We put in this big tank. So that's kind of that room that you see in the background is actually just a big storage tank. And the gravity-fed distribution system, one of the earlier groups had actually done. And so our job on that trip in 2015 was honestly just connecting it all, making sure it works, working with the community to make sure that they know the operation and maintenance plan, and then came back the year later in 2016 just to evaluate. How's it going? Is everything still working? Any more training need to be done? Any more switching or working? So I've got a year of data that I got to do between 2015 2016, which was really cool. And so I did this mixed method approach where I looked at quantitative and qualitative data to try and evaluate, okay, what were the benefits for those of us who went? What were the benefits from the community who received this gift from us? And so some of those results, we did have a functioning water provision, which I think is great. Not every Engineers Without Borders project actually ends in like a very tangible result. And so this was that between that 2015 and 2016, this was the daily production on average by month there from that well and solar system, which was set up. Really cool when you look at the WHO's daily liter per person recommendation. And so we were well above that, which is fantastic. What it was designed for was that yellow line, which means we were pretty good on liters per person towards what it was designed for. You can see in the cloudy, cold months of July, August, September, we're a little bit under, but in general, that was really exciting to see. There was really clear community gains. And so this was the, before this was put in place, this is how, or right when it was put in. So in 2015, this was a breakdown of how much were piped in and then how far people had to walk. And you can see that relates directly with their daily water consumption. And so what was really cool is when we put this in place is that the average person who's collecting from a stand tap, their amount of water that they use actually about doubled per person per day in a really good way. And that's because they were walking less. That's because more and more people were getting it piped in. And so there was this really clear advantage. There's so many studies that show that more water per person leads to more hygiene, better sanitation, all these very clear benefits that come from more water. And when I talked to the community, they were really excited about it, right? And so I did a bunch of interviews with the community there, and they said that people were just really thankful for it. They said it was an easier aid project than other ones because we were leading a lot of it. They felt that there, on the downside, there was this weird trust dependency issues because we started this project in 2009. And we finished the project in 2016 with like long times in between where people would just leave. And because the project was in our hands, they couldn't move it forward. And so this weird trust dependency issues. And there was also these weird issues, deeper issues of race and development politics. So for instance, one person in the community told me, hey, my status in the community was elevated because I was the one who hosted the white people. So suddenly I had a higher position of status. And like those are the kind of like deeper racial issues that were just like very awkward when you look at international development. A couple of the quotes, I think it's good, right? So they said that this project was easier, so it was very stressful. That was a previous project. This one was much easier in comparison because we did it. Someone else even said, even after all these years, right? So this is in 2016, after all these years, I was not worried. I knew you people would come back and fix it, and we were very thankful, which is great that they had that trust, but there are some different layers in that. And then the student volunteers, also a lot of really positive things, right? Service learning oftentimes say that experience is rooted in location, right? And by taking you out of what is normal, you get suddenly all this self-development, right? Not only your academic material that you're practicing, but changing your perspectives, right? My life was changed from that trip in a really cool way. And it set this passion, like maybe the passion was already there, but like grew it into this can be a thing. This is what I want to do, right? And just quality peers. A lot of the people I talk to say one of the best things about EWB is because the other people in EWB, and you guys might be looking around the room like and smiling today. Some of these people, I kid you not, one of those guys that I met in EWB is about to be my best man in my wedding in 2 months. That's how close we are. We met at EWB Georgia Tech, right? Like you are going to meet some really quality people. The people who decide to spend their time while in college doing something good for the world are a very special type of people. So embrace that, love that. So some of those quotes, someone said very clear, you'll learn a lot of stuff you can't understand until you're there. And those of you who've gotten to travel on EWB project really get it. Another person said, I've always thought about serving others, but EWB solidified that, ingrained to me the value of serving others. And these are the kind of things that have long-term impacts. One of the people I talked to said, look, he's like, I went on to be just standard corporate America, but the perspectives I learned with EWB has made me a much more conscious about where and how I give my money. Rather than just giving my money to kind of any charity, he's like, I understand a lot more of really looking into it, what it is they do and how they do it, and if it's actually benefiting the people there. He's like, it's made me a more conscious giver. And I think those are so many long-term benefits from that you get from these EWB projects. And then there's some of the negative sides too, though. So some of the things that bothered me most about EWB is I started feeling selfish things. I felt like I got way more out of EWB than the village did. I didn't see the impact in the village, but I knew I had grown and I had gotten so much out of it. And some of you guys may be experiencing that, right? Is that you want to feel like you're giving back, but you're not seeing the impact. And the reality is you can't really see impact in a week-long project, in a week trip. That's not what it's about, right? But those kind of things really weighed on people. And in fact, some people left EWB because they had these questions about doubt. Is it wrong? Is it selfish? You know, is my place as American to go there and try and fix things? And those can be negative sides of being the ones who travel. If we actually just look at the costs. So there were 8 trips, right? 20 students that traveled. So in the community, or those out of those people directly affected of those who served is about 320 people who were involved in the Georgia Tech project over those years. Project costs to put in that well, to put in those solar, to put in those distribution lines was right under $70,000. Travel costs were over $100,000. And so the cost of sending us there, me, myself included, I was 4 of those trips, right? Was almost double what it was just for the community, which I think is a really interesting thing to consider in all of this and where those money is going, all that great money that we raised for EWB. And then because I started actually running a company, I started looking a lot about like long-term projections. And I realized, you know, as an undergrad student, I didn't know a lot about future projections. What I knew is, oh, the community said that they wanted this many leaders per person, and I just went with that, right? And that's what we designed for. And so that level, the baseline is what, when we first went in 2001, what the average consumption was. The level 1 is what we designed the solar system for. Is that's what they said they wanted to be at this 10 on average, 10 meters cubed daily consumption in the village. But as we're there, and you guys may know this, is the more you give people water, especially piped water, the demand for water skyrockets, right? Suddenly, instead of having to go collect it, you just have it at your house, right? The average American flushes their toilet 8 times a day. That's just one person just flushing. And so just the use of water goes up. And so as I was there this later time, and I started working with community and really predicting what would that demand be if we look at economic growth, who's going to get piped water, okay, how much increases just pipe water, okay, then who wants flush toilets, what's that going to increase? You can see that very, very quickly, this system that we developed and implemented there in level 1 in 2016 was not going to be able to provide for what the community needed, and there's going to be another project, something else to increase water supply in the community. So I won't go into too much detail here because we are running out of time. I want to leave some time for questions, but we also looked at the lifetime of the project and how they're actually going to pay for the operation and maintenance. So yes, a solar system is cheaper to run, right? So the operational cost, people are like, oh, it's basically free. Basically free is not free. There is still cost. There are still things that are going to be breakdown. There's still work that needs to be done to maintain the system. And so what we looked at is a bunch of different ways of funding it. So each of those bars are different funding, like how you could price it and charge. And you can see that only 3 out of any of them would actually be able to pay for the entire O&M costs for the system over 25 years. Those 3, now you can kind of see broken out into what those average costs would be based on if you're just going to a standpipe or low income, middle income, high income, if you had like increasing costs. And basically what you're seeing here is what Mamuda, so that was the community we were working with, wanted to charge, that yellow line, versus what the utility was charging, that red line, versus what was going to actually work. So there's a lot of analysis in this, and just to simplify it all down, is at the end of the project, there wasn't a clear cost structure for how the community was going to be able to reach what people were able to pay and still collect enough money to pay to keep the system going for 25 years. And that was really hard. And it was really interesting because we were working with some of the richest people in the community, as you can imagine. Those are the ones that speak English. Those are the ones who have time to work with us. Those are the ones and these guys were fighting really hard, literally seeing in front of my eyes, the rich guys fighting to pay less and asking the poorest of the poor to pay more. So they're like, it should be equal. Everyone should pay the same amount. But like, there's so much problems with equality in that. And so we really had to fight them on this. And at the end, there wasn't really a clear solution. And so, yes, the system was running, but there wasn't a clear way of how it's going to continue to run equitably for the next 25 years. So all in all, just kind of that analysis of back to service learning of students versus community. And we found that there was my analysis found that there were so many benefits going to me, the student, the traveler, that it didn't always equal what the community was getting. And so there's some really tough quotes. So this one by Go from 1989, so a while ago, before service learning was really popular. And they said this quote. He said that service learning is basically allowing relatively well-off people in this world to travel long distances to experience other people's misery for a life-enriching experience. And if that's not like a dagger to your heart, then reread it, right? Like that is hard to swallow, especially for those of us who are in EWB, who are the people who want to travel, right? And we don't want to think about it that way, that we're going to experience other people's misery for our own life enriching, but sometimes it feels that way, right? And there's another great quote here. This was from one of the students who traveled, right? So this was an alumni of Georgia Tech who's reflecting on it. And they said that this was years after they traveled. And she said, I still have questions and doubts about EWB, the cost and time to make what impact. But I think about how has it changed me? And I like to evaluate it on that rather than the questionable good done in the community. I would recommend it to any college student. I think this is a really, really good quote. Because I don't think it's inherently bad that those of us as students who are traveling with EWB are getting more than the community. I don't think that in itself is bad. I think where the problem is when we try to pretend that it's not that way. when we focus about and try to think, oh, we're so good because we're giving back to the community and they're getting all these great things, therefore I'm a better person because I'm giving to the community. And I think that perspective is wrong. And I think when instead we can keep this perspective instead of, oh, I'm getting out of this, I'm learning, then you end up traveling with a much better perspective of I'm here to learn from the community. I'm here to have my life enriched. I'm here to, and you have that mentality of appreciativeness. The community feels that, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think every American should travel to these areas and give back because it's so good for us and because we learn so much. And I think the community's okay with that, right? And so there's a lot on perspective. So let me get just to the recommendations. Again, Asher, I apologize. I know we're coming up to the end of the time, so you can guide us with how much time we have for questions. But I really want to talk about these recommendations because these are things that Georgia Tech, EWB can do right here, right now. So some of the more tangible engineering ones is we can have clear protocols and consideration for designing of future projections, right? This is something I didn't know how to do as an undergrad. So whatever projects you guys are doing, spend the time really thinking through, okay, what are the technicality of getting this to actually run for the lifespan? What are the O&M costs? How is that going to be paid? How is the political structure within the community you're working with going to set that up in an equitable way so that we're not just the richest people in the community are benefiting from these projects, right? Those social impacts that you have, right? How is me as a rich, white, oftentimes white, but a rich American going there? What impacts am I having? Really think about that long term. Training for non-engineering data collection analysis. I didn't realize the fact until I'd gone back after studying this in my master's that this idea that everyone I had talked to in my first 2 trips was educated, well off in comparison to the community, male. All of them. I didn't talk to a single other person outside of that demographic. And I think it's really, really important to ensure that you're getting a range of perspectives from those community members. I think as engineers, there's a lot that we can learn on doing better data collection, both qualitative and quantitative, looking not only at the technical aspects, but the socio and economics. So if you don't have non-engineering students in your EWB team right now, EWB, go find them, right? We have those at Georgia Tech. They're rarer. Find them. You need them. They have a lot of really good ideas, right? These are people in management. These are people who are studying social issues. They're there. Find them. You need them. Learn from them. There's a lot of really good literature on how to approach service learning better to have success. So one of the biggest one is social preparation before travel. Before we went to Cameroon, no one prepared me at all for what it was going to be like. No one prepared me about how to get myself in the right perspective about what was and wasn't going to happen in a week, right? I went there thinking I was going to save Cameroon in a week. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to save Cameroon. Like, that is just a wrong perspective, right? But there's a lot of really good books you guys could work through together of just like case studies with questions and just getting yourself socially prepared before you travel. I think after you come back, we also never had any classes to reflect and evaluate and, you know, like this is how I was impacted. How is the community impacted? You know, these kind of questions outside of the engineering little bubble, right? We did lots of analysis on how did our engineering work go, but we didn't on all these other things. And the biggest one, as I mentioned, is that perspective check. If you're going there to learn and have just this open heart and open mind and appreciative, you are going to benefit that community and yourself much, much better than if you go thinking you're going to save Cameroon or wherever the project is. I really recommend mentors who are more than just technical advisors. Every advisor I had at EWB when I was an undergrad was a professor or a professional engineer, which is great. They know a lot, don't get me wrong. But you also need non-technical advisors, people who've done international development, people who've traveled, maybe people who've studied socio or economic aspects. This is very, very important to help us engineering students get a much more comprehensive approach. And then I think just be transparent and know it and talk about it is evaluating the pros and cons of project costs for the community versus travel. We never talked about it. We never talked about, wow, you know, our trip if we take 4 students, it's going to cost this much money, but the community's only getting this much money. And I think that's really important. Just be transparent about it. It's okay to spend a lot of money on travel. It's okay to spend more money on travel than it is on the project, like actually on the community. That's okay, but let's just be honest and make that conscious decision rather than just letting it build up. And I think there's a difference in that. And then I want to encourage you guys, try and use and support the local economy as much as possible, right? Pay for local labor. Rather than you digging a trench if you're traveling, pay someone else to dig a trench. It's going to go a lot. They're going to do it better. You're going to support the local economy. Also, same for like local capacity training. It's one thing for you to teach someone how to run the solar system that you did. It's another thing to pay for someone in that community to go and get training on solar systems and have that certification and have that, whatever it is, so that they can use that to continue to grow and expand their knowledge and experience and have that. So I think that's really key too. That is where I'll stop. I know that I've talked a while. I hope you guys, I guess I didn't summarize all this. All this to say is the journey you're on is amazing. EWB is fantastic, but there are so many things that we can do here now to make it even better.
I'm muted. I can speak from the chapter when I say that was fantastic. Wait, am I okay.
I hear you.
That was fantastic. That was an incredibly engaging talk, and we really appreciate the time you spent both preparing it and giving it tonight. We have a couple questions that have been submitted already by interested members, but there's also some members here. If anyone wants to ask a question in the room. Cool. More people have submitted questions to the document. If you want to, you can come up and read them, actually. That would work. I can read them. Okay, no worries. I just refreshed and got them. How much time do you have, out of curiosity?
I'm flex on my side.
Okay, that sounds good to me. We can just go through a couple of cool ones. All right, is your question number 9? Oh no.
What is your question?
Well, I have you. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Hi, Emily. Oh no. Okay. Not okay. Maybe. Okay. First of all, that was awesome. I learned so much, and it was really like as a team, we've been like grappling with a lot of the things that you mentioned, and so presentation really resonated. I think for me and for others, and also was really encouraging. Cool to see it from like a data perspective, and also someone who's been through all of it and actually started like a social enterprise, which I'm actually really curious about. One of my questions was, I have many, but one of my questions was, with Sanivation and like getting those first treatment plants like off the ground, how did you convince, or how did you gain those first clients? How did you bring them on board to your idea, or I don't know. I guess a little more detail on like the beginning of things, because I think it's really hard to get things started, especially like getting local partners. It's really easy to sell things maybe here in the States and get funding, but yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I get you. It was a very slow beginning, right? It's been a long.
Oh gosh.
So it's been a long journey. Can you guys hear me okay now? In the beginning, when we first started, it was really just working like with these community members that we met, right? And just like bouncing ideas off, and like literally one of these local community members, her name was Nancy, and just like she also had a passion for doing something good in this community, and she let us use her backyard. And we started like building things, kid you not, in her backyard in the middle of Karagita, Kenya. And that was really cool because we had tons of community interaction. And so we got to learn, like that's where actually our first idea of making briquettes, like solid fuel from human waste, was because we just had this like solar concentrator in her backyard. And this guy walking by was like, oh, cool. Like, can you cook on that? And like, yeah, you could cook on it, but like we're cooking poop on it. I don't know if you want to cook on it. And then he started explaining to me how expensive, like how much of his salary goes to fuel and how hard it is and how bad it is for the environment. And that's when I started realizing, oh wow, poop has a lot of carbon in it. I wonder what dried poop would burn like. And we started burning poop, and like just right there in the community. So I think it always starts small and it's slow, and it grows from there. And so I think that's how it starts is diving in. I think one of the key things that's really helpful is to actually move to the community that you want to work in and just like be there full time working with them. A lot of people try and develop ideas, say for a place like Kenya, in a lab in America. And the reality is like you're not going to understand the context. You're not going to really understand the business models. You're not going to make those relationships. You're not going to understand everything outside of the technical aspect. And so all the time, even today, I get things developed out of labs that people want me to test, and they fail immediately because they were developed in a lab in America and not on the ground in Kenya. And so I think the first things I would say is, yeah, be there in the community, get those, just find that person with that passion too, and work hand in hand with them and as many other people from the community, and it'll grow from there. And when you get it right, so this is always a problem too, is people are always solving for the wrong problem. And so there's always a problem under a problem under a problem under a problem. And like you will see by how fast things start scaling and how many people jump on, that you're getting closer and closer to the actual problem you should be solving. And like we're still trying to figure it out, but we're pretty dang close right now because of the rate of how fast. Like we begin that pitch I kind of gave you guys today. We start that now with like different government partners, and like 3 minutes into that, like yes, I'm in, and like when you start getting that, then you're at the right problem. So I think to answer your question, how did it start? It started slow, very slow, and started working with the community and just has grown to now we get not only national recognition. If any of you guys have watched on Netflix Brave Blue World, that Matt Damon kind of narrates some, it features my company on that. Like we are featured on a Netflix documentary, like which I think is like a really cool like new high.
Well, thank you so much for your response. I really appreciate it. It was really cool hearing more about that. I've got a question here. Does anyone else have a question in the room? Perfect. Okay. This one I think is really impactful and really relevant to us. What lessons would you teach to a younger Emily Woods with like all the experience you have now and everything else?
Yeah, I think a lot of the things I touched on today, I think like because I think about this a lot. And I want you to know that, I called today's talk like debating how to do international development, like how to do it well. I don't have the solutions yet. Like it is a daily, still learning, still growing. Like one of the things I love is, so my company is, now 96% Kenyan run, but that still remaining 4% actually tends to be some of the highest management in the company. And like that's an interesting place, and we're constantly still debating that, and what role does international what am I saying? Employees, where does that fit in when you're trying to do social impact in Kenya? So I don't have it fully figured out, but as I look back, I think one of the key lessons, let me try and summarize. One, technology is oftentimes a very, very small piece of the solution. And I think as engineers, especially right out of undergrad, we forget that. We're like, oh, it's all about the technology. It's one small piece of the puzzle, right? And so it's good to keep that in perspective. Two, you're not single-handedly in a week going to save the world. And it's really easy as a college kid with all the like passion and excitement. It's not bad, and I want to encourage that. But it's good to again go back to that perspective of as a college student, I would tell myself, you're there to learn, right? Soak in as much and come at it from that perspective rather than a perspective of how can I fix, how can I help? If you instead come at it from a what can I learn? I think it would set me up for a lot less failures in my life. Third, I really want to encourage all of you engineering students to study outside of engineering too. and I touched on this a lot, but so the master's program I ended up doing at Berkeley, it's called the Erg Problem Program. So it's Energy and Natural Resources Group, Erg, and it's an interdisciplinary program that combines engineering, social science, public policy, economics, international development, like all of these different things. And for the first time, I saw how engineering really fit into this bigger puzzle piece, and it was this huge revelation for me. And I was like, oh, this is it, right? And so I wish, as at Georgia Tech, that I had studied more in economics or in business modeling. I wish I had gone to some of the business classes over in the management school. I wish I had taken more about social science. Social science is so important, and how to do qualitative interviews. If you would have asked undergrad me, I would have been like, I got math, like totally bypassing, like not worried about it at all. But I really, really would encourage that. I think another big learning is open your mind every day to what success could be. So I think Georgia Tech's amazing, but Georgia Tech gives you a very narrow idea of what success looks like. Success looks like getting an awesome job at Boeing right out of graduation, where I get a signing bonus of $80,000, like that's success. And I think when you define it that way, it cuts out so many other opportunities in your life. And so what I did while I was at Georgia Tech, I think was really cool, whether it's EWB or I sold books door to door in the summer, which is crazy, rather than getting a normal internship. I played rugby, when I graduated. I started a company in Chile, or I worked for Georgia Tech Research Institute. There's just like a lot of other ideas of what is success. And I think it's really helpful to open your mind to a lot of other options than the very stereotypical 4 years co-op straight into an engineering job. It doesn't have to be that way.
And on another note, Beth, didn't you play rugby for like the women's Kenyan team?
I did, yeah. So I helped start the Georgia Tech women's rugby team back in 2006, and I went on to play. I played rugby around the world. I don't play anymore, but when I first moved to Kenya, I played for the national team for a couple years, and that was cool because we got to play in Dubai and Hong Kong and Paris. So it was really, really fun to play with them.
That is fantastic to hear. That is so cool. I am very jealous. This is Will. Hey.
Hi, Emily. My name's
Hey, Will.
Will. I've been off camera. I have a follow-up question to your recent comment about Boeing and whatnot. Can you hear me?
So I wasn't hating on Boeing. Just so
No. No, I guess a follow-up to the point of that comment, more so. So I remember walking into the career fair earlier this semester and having an opportunity to talk to a company like Sanivation was not an opportunity there. Like, I want to know, as first years here, or if you're graduating from Georgia Tech, how can you market yourself in this career of sustainable development internationally when a lot of that focus is on the internship, co-op, sort of linear progression to a six-figure salary by the time you're 30 and a 401k. So what sort of what sort of, I guess, conversations did you have in college that really inspired you to want to pursue this? And then how can you make that a not only marketable but profitable thing for yourself and also for the work you're doing? I'm very curious.
Yes.
And I've gotten.
That's sad. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay, I didn't mean to interrupt. I think it's a very savvy question, Will, because I don't think there's a straightforward answer. A lot of companies like mine are, in general, like, we're not spending money on marketing and going to career fairs because we don't have that extra budget, right? And so it makes it harder to find those opportunities. I think two things come to mind. One, do your research. There's so many cool companies. Find what it is that's passionate for you and reach out to them, right? Maybe there's projects that they would love to have more undergrads, like just helping while you're in school. Maybe there's things that you can start volunteering with them. Maybe they would be interested in a fellowship opportunity. Maybe they are looking for some kind of skill that you can offer. but you're going to have to go find them. They're not going to be able to come find you. And I think that that's hard for a lot of undergrads. The second thing I'd say is find what you're good at and what you like and get more skills in that, and you will be incredibly marketable to these companies. So it's kind of a vague answer to say specifically. So for instance, we had someone who graduated out of Stanford and came to work for my company directly out of Stanford. And so she wasn't paying much, but she was helping us write a lot of grants. And so like very much needed an international perspective to be able to write all these grants. She had studied communication. She knew she wanted to work in developing areas. And after being with us for a year, she really realized, there's so many skills she didn't have yet. And it was going to be hard to get at a small company like ours. And so she actually left us, and then she went and did consulting, classic consulting for one of the top 5 for 2 years. But in those 2 years, the skills that she got were unreal. And now she's back in Kenya working for another social enterprise and just like having incredible impacts because of these skills. And so maybe you really like design. Great. Go work for a design company for a couple of years. Go work for someone like Stantec. Learn really all the details of how to do water design systems and have that skill. Then come apply. We would love to have someone with that kind of skill. Go get your PE. With a PE and you're certified, there are so many startups around the world, social enterprises that would love that skill. Maybe you really like engineering business modeling and like that kind of forecasting. Awesome. Go get that. Maybe it's a master's, maybe it's working with a company. And I think that might help you with that marketing skill. The reality is out of undergrad, you don't necessarily have a lot of tangible skills to offer. You've got a great degree. And so maybe it does make sense to go work for Boeing for a couple of years, get some skills, be researching, be volunteering, and be ready to take that. That's what I'd say. And also, I know Georgia Tech's trying to grow a lot of its entrepreneurs focus too. Starting companies is awesome and really exciting, and go for it.
That was a fantastic response.
Thank you.
I really. Did you hear Will say thank you?
I did.
Nice. Reed, do you have a question?
Yes. Find the camera yet? Oh, great.
Yes.
Thank you, Emily. This has been an awesome talk. I think a lot of the points that you hit on are just something that, as an executive board, we try to focus on, and we're not perfect at, but really appreciate it. And I wanted to say, you mentioned a lot about travel and your experience with travel. And so I don't think any of our members have traveled with an EWB project because of the pandemic. And so we've had to shift, not a single one, because of, how EWB projects transition so quickly between, project leads and executive board. And so we've had to shift a lot to remote implementation. And I was curious how Sanivation and some of your personal projects with development have had to shift because of that. And maybe if you could give some advice on how to still find local designs and solutions, and as well as interacting with the community on a daily basis because of remote implementation, because I don't think that's going to be going away with EWB anytime soon.
Yeah, I think sometimes we forget there's a community right outside of our doorstep that has a ton of needs. And it's really cool to think about traveling and going, but you're right, you can't always. And I do think it's so important to have that local context. And Atlanta is cool because it's home to refugees from around the world. So you want to learn about cultures from around the world and people who need some serious support and help. There's huge, recently refugee relocation projects there down in Decatur. Atlanta has a huge homeless scene. You want a really fascinating engineering meets social question to debate is how do you provide basic services like water and sanitation to the homeless community in Atlanta? I have no idea. No one does. And so I think what I would encourage is Engineers Without Borders doesn't mean it can't also be in Atlanta. And I think having that local perspective is really, really helpful. Cool. Traveling abroad is amazing for all the things that I said. It's a really, really cool experience. But it doesn't mean that you can't have those cool experiences right there in Atlanta. So maybe consider that. I still think that there's still some really cool things about raising money and helping to support a community abroad to like be able to pay for projects that they're doing. I think that's always really helpful too. Um, and that way you get to kind of experience like you're part of it without ever having to travel. And I guess that's what you guys have been doing, is trying to support as much as you can remotely, and that's really cool.
Reed said, "Great, thank you." Sorry, we were muted. I've got a couple more questions, but unless we have any others in the room, then I think we can wrap up with this concluding one, if that works for everyone.
Okay.
Okay. And that one is, what can we do as student leaders of Engineers Without Borders? How can we improve upon Engineers Without Borders using the perspectives that you've talked about and addressing the problems that you mentioned during your talk?
I honestly think the biggest recommendation I would have for you guys is there are so many resources out there to prepare students for starting learning, service learning, and to help reflect after. And we never did those. And EWB, like at the national chapters, like recommend that. And for some reason that never made it to Georgia Tech when I was there. Maybe you guys are doing that now. But I think like pick one of the books. There's tons of them out there, and like work through it together and like debate those questions, because there's no right answer. But like debating those questions and putting yourself in that mindset, I think will make all the difference in the world to help you approach these projects in the best frame of mind, which I really think is the key to all of it. Like there's nothing inherently bad about anything we're doing. We just can keep making it better by having the right perspective. So that would be my biggest recommendation. And if you want specific ones, I can help you pick through a list. Heck, I'd be willing to keep talking about this stuff. Like this is my passion. Like I really want to help American volunteers be able to do volunteerism better. And so pick one of those, start working through it. We can work through it together. I can recommend however I can help. I'd be happy to. But that would be my like top recommendation. People smarter than I have written these resources.
Hi. Maybe, I think you should also write a book because this is pretty awesome. But yeah, if you have book recommendations now or later, that would be really great. I personally want to read, and I know that like there's a lot of initiative in the chapter to also read into and discuss these issues.
Yeah, we can read on the whole range. There's some that just like hate on it, right? And they're just like so negative and so cynical. But I think it's good to read those and then also read the good ones.
Agreed.
Go ahead,
Okay. Sorry, the audio is a game. And yeah, so I guess with that, like asking for book recommendations, and just I just wanted to like have a broader plea for like a future relationship with EWB Georgia Tech. I think that like those of us that are here learned a lot and want and have more questions and really want to seek your mentorship. So whether it's for book recommendations in the future or advice on our sanitation, like our Malawi Sanitation Solutions project, as that moves forward, or like, I don't know, career advice. I think that we have a lot of value, or there's a lot of value that we see right here, and so I don't know what more I can say, but you're awesome.
Awesome. It's really, really cool to talk to all of you. I would love to be more involved. This is where my passion is. So happy, and whatever that makes sense of being a mentor. I will compile just some resources that come directly to mind and send those over. Like I said, maybe it starts with a book club of some sort to get a bunch of engineers debating these really hard social issues, which just like sounds awesome to me. Does it sound awesome to some of you? But I'll send that over, and any other way that that it's helpful. Talia, I know that you sent me an email about the Malawi ones. Sorry, I haven't sent anything back yet. But yeah, happy to talk. Obviously, most of the time I'm 9 hours ahead of you guys, so time change is difficult, but we can figure that out.
That sounds perfect to me. Mark wanted me to mention that we do actually have an Engineers Without Borders book club that we've got going, and we need new books for it, so your input's greatly appreciated.
Cool. I would love to know what you've already read.
Oh, is the best way to contact you by email, or would you prefer us contact? Perfect. Okay,
Email's
I'll
great.
just shoot you email out to interested members. Cool. I think that about wraps it up. Thank you again so much. I can speak for the chapter for sure when I say thank you so much. This was a really insightful global seminar, and we had a ton of fun doing it. Thanks.
Great. Better to see you all. Have a lovely evening. And yeah, we'll talk soon. We'll keep in touch. Thanks, guys.
For sure. See ya. Bye, Emily.